the Gospel of Luke gives us a slightly different perspective on Jesus when he was on the cross in Calvary. They introduce us to a figure was not introduced in any of the other Gospels, and it starts off like this. He had already went from judgment hall to judgment hall. Already went from one trial to another trial. The ones who were the stimulus for the trial was the church. He was saving too many folk. He was transforming too many lives. He was healing those he was not supposed to heal. He was touching folk he were not supposed to touch. He was delivering folk that were not supposed to be delivered. He was setting folk free who were not supposed to be set free. And guess who got mad as hell? The church. The church did not agree with how Jesus was doing the things that he was doing. And they decided they were going to trap Jesus. And they wanted Jesus to be charged as a criminal. Because this was Jewish business and Jesus was a Jew, the church had to handle it first. Jesus went in front of the Sanhedrin and in front of the council, and they accused him of blasphemy. They accused him of many things, and they said, okay, now let's send him to Pontius Pilate. Sent him to Pilate. Pilate asked him the questions that he needed to ask, and he's in front of now the guy that's in charge of the area of Judea. He's in front of them, and he is now asking Jesus question, and Jesus is not really answering any of his questions. And he suddenly says, I find no fault in this man. Saying he's find no fault in this man. They say, well, what do you want me to do? You do know there's another criminal named Barabbas. You can give him up. The church folk said, no, we don't want Barabbas. Crucify him. He washed his hands away. I'm always amazed by how folk wash their hands to let some stuff go. Then they took him back to the Jews, and they kept on saying, crucify him, crucify him. Then went to the Grand Council, and the Grand Council said, we're going to crucify you. I'm just summarizing really what took place. And as this all began to happen, they decided that they were going to crucify God. I don't know if you got that. They decided they were going to crucify God. Now, part of crucifying God, according to the Roman law, is that he had to be hung on 2 beams of wood. They actually took it a little bit deeper. The original way of doing it was really 1 beam of wood, but because it's the Roman law, they wanted to stretch it a little bit more. So they decided that now they're going to use 2 beams of wood to crucify God. Now he has his cross. But there is a brother here, Simon from Cyrene, North African brother. He sees Jesus in his pain and in his agony because he's been dealing with going back and forth for some time and being mocked and all of these things. And instead of Jesus carrying the cross, Simon the Cyrene, he carries the cross. He's carrying his cross. I find it to be amazing how humanity was helping the divine out, carrying his cross. Now, get him to the hill called Calvary, and there's two other persons with him. These malefactors, they are criminals. They deserve to be on Calvary. They've done wrong. They deserve to hang there where they were, but God in the middle? Something doesn't sound right about that picture. Here it is, these two malefactors, and God is now a part of the crowd of malefactors. Now, this had to catch you off guard because God did no wrong. Jesus never hurt or sold. He only helped folk. But because the church was so mad and so angry with the things that he was doing, and because it was against the tradition, they created a situation where our God, their God, was in the middle of two thieves, and now they are saying one simple word: crucify him. It was a heinous act. He had already been beaten with a whip made of leather strips connected with bones. So therefore, when they took the whip and they whooped him with the whip, the bones began to get underneath his skin, and his skin begins to rip. This is God I'm talking about. Bones in God's body, ripping it apart, and now blood is coming down. Took some nails. They took nails and he put nails in God's hand. I don't know if y'all really understand what I'm saying. We're talking about God, y'all. We're not talking about anybody else. We're talking about he who created heaven and earth. We're talking about he who put earth together. He who named the days. He who was a part of creation. He who made them is now being crucified by them. It was a heinous act. Crown of thorns shoved on his head. His body is broken into several pieces. He's losing his breath because he's been hanging, and all of a sudden his head is drooped down. Nails in his feet. We're talking about God. Why would anybody do that to God? It's a heinous act. It was a heinous act then, but let's fast forward, because for a quick second, we need to understand there has been some heinous acts taking place now. What would make someone take families, separate families, and put babies behind cage wire? What man would, in his right mind, create a policy that would separate family? That's a heinous act. One that does not make sense in any man's mind, rightful man, to separate a family. What? That's a heinous act. What would make a girl go into a school with a gun to shoot her peers? What person in their right mind would do something like that? We talk about heinous acts. We talk about acts that really just doesn't make any form of sense whatsoever. What kind of person would rape a girl? Or what kind of person would rape another man? What kind of person would rape someone who has no way of defending themselves? How does a person wrap their minds around that notion and think that it's all right? That's a heinous act. And I don't know if you felt or if you've experienced some of the pain that I've experienced just watching the news and dealing with the stuff that we see day in and day out, and just saying, what kind of world do we live in today? What kind of person would rape a baby? How do you take your theology and your faith and wrap your mind around those notions? It does not make sense to me, and it caused me to have a heavy burden all week long. And Jesus was the first heinous act that has taken place, but since then, there has been millions of heinous acts taking place. Why would Hitler kill all the Jews? What person would wrap their mind around that? What person would because of color, take another country and put other folk who are different in the skin tone and put them into slavery? What kind of person think that it's all right to beat another human being and tell them to call you master? Heinous acts of crime and stuff that's been taking over all through our time. Can I just preach for a little while? Since Jesus and all of these acts, I just wonder, how do we get beyond it? And I think Jesus might have helped us out slightly. I'm not going to say that's not. He helped us out. It's just a difficult task. Listen to Jesus' words. It's right there. Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. How do you get to forgiveness? Now, that ought to shock all of us, because when you read the scripture, Jesus is looking at the ones who mocked him. He's looking at the church who started the whole thing. He's looking at the Roman soldiers who nailed him to the cross. And you would think, in any rightful person's mind, you would think he would have been angry. But what comes out of his mouth first is forgive. Can we have a decent conversation about how does he get to forgiveness to the people who are causing him pain, agony, and hurt? I wonder about this, because you have to think about this, because do you remember that disciple Stephen? Stephen believed in Jesus the Christ. And because he believed in Jesus the Christ, they decided that they were going to stone him to death. And just in case, if you don't understand what the whole stoning process was, they would dig a hole in the ground. And they would put you in the ground and then cover up the ground until it gets to your neck. And then they would take stones, and then they would throw the stones until you die. And hear me well. Stones are coming at Stephen. And what are the words that Stephen uttered from his mouth? Father, forgive them. Okay, maybe you don't like Stephen, but what about James, that righteous one? When James was up against his life, his last second of life, and he's looking at the person who's about to execute him. You know what words he said? Father, forgive them. Can I keep going down the line for a second? Because now, look at that whole, that philosophical person, Thomas More. And Thomas More, watch this, my brothers and sisters. He was right there looking at the executioner in his eyes as the axe was coming down upon his neck. And the witnesses said that the next thing he said before the axe got to his neck was some simple words. Father, forgive them.
Or maybe it was that other brother, Michael Sattler, Anabaptist brother, who, because he believed in what he believed in, with a tongue that was cut in half right before his death, tongue bleeding, he says, Father, forgive them. Let me bring it up some. That pastor in South Carolina, whose wife got killed because of a Bible study, and all the other 6 folk who were killed, sees the man who does the crime and looks at him and says, Father, forgive them. How do you get to forgiveness when you can't wrap your mind around a heinous act? And that's what we have to deal with now. And I'm really done really quick because this is really interesting because we get it from Jesus himself. And here is the first point, my brothers and sisters. Do you know how Brother Moore was able to do it? Do you know how Brother Stephen was able to do it? Do you know how Michael Stella was able to do it? Do you know how the brother from the Anabaptist brother was able to do it? Do you know how the pastor was able to do it in South Carolina, and any and every other person who has been executed or persecuted under false intentions? Is one simple thing. They understood something that Jesus helps us to understand, and it's right here. It is God is present and ready. Y'all don't, I need you to catch up with me. God is present and God is ready. Here it is. Jesus lets us understand that even while he was on the cross, he understood that God was there. Okay? He understood God was there. And can I help us out for a second to get beyond some stuff in our lives that are hurting us and causing us pain, the stuff that we cannot wrap our minds around, that does not make sense to us one way or the other. There ought to be some sense of comfort to know one simple reality: God is present. And I don't know if that doesn't make anybody shout or make anybody happy, but it does something for me that no matter what goes on in my life, no matter who has walked out of my life, no matter who has caused me harm, no matter what I have gone through, no matter how bad my day has been, no matter how much hell I've gone through the week, the one thing I ought to be able to know and to remember is that God was in front of it all. That ought to be able to set some of you free. That ought to be able to set some of us free. That it does not matter what I'm going through. That there's one witness that knows all, and that is God. He sees everything. He knows everything. And he's around everything. Ooh, can I preach for a little while? I ought to be able to make you and give you some sense of comfort. That though I may have sickness, and though I may have pain, and though I may have hurt, there is one person who's right there with me. The doctor may come late. The nurse may come late. My friend may not come see me. My siblings may abandon me. But there is one person who is right there with me in the morning, at noonday, at nighttime, and his name is God. I had to wrap my mind around this, because I've learned that wasn't nobody else there when 9/11 took place. God was there. I've learned that no matter how many heinous acts we see on the television and we think that everybody has left, God was still there. He said, Say, God is there, but how do we know? How do we know God is there? Here you go. It's right there. Because all Jesus said was, Father. Y'all didn't catch that. All Jesus said was, Father. Now, all he said was Father. He had to have known the Father was there, and he had to have the assurance to know that when he says Father, the Father would hear him. Because there's no reason to call out his name if you're not sure that he's there and he's listening. You have to catch that real quick. Every now and then when you are in your stuff and when things don't look right, you try to understand why the only thing I have to say is Father, because you already know by your experiences and by your history with him that he is there. And if you just call on his name, Father. Now, let me give you a better picture about really what I'm saying, because I learned this, Cassandra, because I used to work in New York. And, you know, New York is very expensive, so I didn't drive into New York because I didn't have deep pockets. So I would have to catch the train. Catch the train, I would carry my little rolling case with all these books because I was an IT person, and I had the privilege of sitting at my desk every now and then with books because I'm trying to solve the problem. Do that every day. In the evening, after being at work all day long, tired. My boss been on my back and tired. I had to get this done. I had to get that done. Deadbeat. Matter of fact, I even miss lunch every now and then. Then I got to get back on the train, people stepping on my feet. Train so tight, you can't even breathe without breathing somebody else's breath. People walking over me, I'm deadbeat tired, I'm drained. I have nothing else to offer any and nobody else. Now I'm on my way home. Cars cutting in front of me. People blowing the horn. Just all kinds of hectic stuff on my way home. Then I open up my door. I still have bags in my hand. I'm drained and I have nothing else to offer. All I want to do is sit down and have me a nice meal so I can go to sleep. But bags are in my hand. Drained, tired. Don't want to be bothered with nobody. But Kennedy would come without any form of warning. My daughter, Kennedy, she would come running because she had not seen her father all day long. And she comes running to me without any warning at all. And Kennedy would run to me, and then Kennedy would leap. Y'all gonna catch up with me for a second. She, without no warning, Kennedy would leap. Because she understood if I leap, my father would catch me. Y'all still did not catch that. I just stopped by to let some of us know that you don't have to worry that no matter what God is doing, if you just call his name, because I realized when Kennedy would come running to me with her hands up, I had to drop what was in my hands so I can pick her up. Can I preach just for a little while? Thanks be to God that no matter what is going on beyond the bounties of heaven, if you just be a child and every now and then throw your hands up to the Father, he has no other choice besides to pick you up and talk to you just for a little while. My. I'm just as happy now because when I think about it, how do we know that God will not drop you or God will not pick you up? Because my God said he neither sleep nor slumber. That should catch some of us for a second. God said he's neither sleep nor slumber. So there's never a moment in time that God is not standing by, waiting for me to tell him what's been going on in my life and what I am struggling and dealing with. All I have to do is call on his name. All I have to do is call on the lily of the valley. All I have to do is call on the bright and morning star. All I have to do is call on Alpha and Omega. All I have to do is just say, Father, come see about me. Recognize that he's ready for you. If you want to get to forgiveness and how to get beyond a heinous act, know that he's there and he's waiting for you. But he's waiting for you because you ought to know that you have a relationship with him. And because you have a relationship with him, it ought not be anything that you can't tell him. Okay, watch this. He was on the cross in pain. On the cross in agony. And he says, Father. That blows my mind away because I'm not sure if I'd have said the same thing. I'm not sure if I'd have said, Father. I probably would have cussed. I probably would have looked at some folk and gave them a piece of my mind. I'd have done a whole lot of stuff, but I'd never said, don't believe I'd have said Father. But I'm learning that what we need to learn and understand is that we need to be able to give all of our pain to the one who knows about it, but is also the only one that can fix it. Yeah. See, I'm getting beyond the point of telling other folk about my pain and my agony, not because I don't think they care, but I've come to the realization they can't fix it. And I need to talk to the one who can fix my pain, my agony, my sickness, my hurt, my frustration, and everything else. In other words, I need to talk to the one that is okay to be mad as hell with. Y'all didn't catch that. See, we live in a day and time where they have taught us that you can't be mad at God. And I don't know who said that, but something is wrong. If I can't be mad at God, maybe God ought not to be my God. Okay, I know some folk don't like that. If our anger is too much for the one who created the sun, there's something wrong with that. If our anger is too much for the one who put the stars in the sky, there's something wrong with that. But I stopped by to let you know, no matter how angry you are and no matter how hurt you are, God can handle all of it. I'm trying to help somebody out. If you want to get to forgiveness, you got to know God is ready. And you got to be able to give all of your pain to him. But this is what else is interesting. Is that, notice, Jesus did not say, Father, forgive me. He said, Father, forgive them. He didn't do any wrong, so he didn't need to be forgiven. The only people that need to be forgiven were those who did wrong. You had those who actually did the act. You had those who actually watched the act. And then you had those who was the ones who were encouraging the acts. In other words, everybody that was around the cross was responsible for the act. And he looks at them and he say, Father, forgive them. And the most important part to realize is why he said forgive them. Here it is. He said forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. Okay. See if I can catch you. Most folk, if not all folk, don't know what they are doing in the heinous act. No rightful mind would rape a little girl. No rightful mind would go into a school and shoot people. No rightful mind would take a plane and take it through a building. No rightful mind would do acts where they think that it's all right. There must be something wrong with that person. And if you realize that there's something wrong with that person, then you can say, Father, forgive them. Okay, I'm trying to help us out. Here it is. Because forgiveness is a way to healing. But you always have to remember two things, and I'm done. Healing has nothing to do with justice. And healing has nothing to do with reconciliation. Reconciliation needs two people. Healing and justice means that somebody else has to execute the just thing that needs to take place. And you never get confused when you think the only way you can heal is if justice is done. That is not the case. And the only way that you can heal is if you're reconciled. That is not the case. But you need both healing and you need the reality to learn that forgiveness comes from the moment that you decide to forgive. In other words, forgiveness has nothing to do with the person who caused the heinous act. Forgiveness has everything to do with who you are and what you have to get done. Can I just preach for a little while? Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. In other words, they need your forgiveness, and I know they need your forgiveness because I also know you have already forgiven me. Really wasn't expecting nobody to shout. What made God so just is that he does not look at one act to be greater than another act. Y'all still don't. What makes God so just? He does not look at one act and think that that's greater than another act. In other words, he doesn't look at one sin and think that another sin is greater. To him, one sin is the same as any sin. And I just stopped by to tell you, there's some things that all of us put a frown on God's face. None of us get off of this thing to be clean slate. That if God can forgive you for the sin that you have caused, you can forgive others for the sin that they have caused. And the reality is, you ought to want them to be forgiven. Because watch this, if a murderer can get to heaven, that makes me happy because I'm not a murderer. If somebody is a thief can get to heaven, that makes me happy because I'm not a thief. In other words, if God can let the lowest scoundrels in heaven, surely he can let me into heaven. And I'll just stop by to give you my shout when I think of his goodness and all he's done for me. My soul cries out, hallelujah! I thank God for saving me. But I thank God for forgiving me. I thank God for not giving up on me. I thank God for loving me. I thank God for having mercy on me. I thank God for having some love just for me. How do I get beyond the heinous acts? I got to know and believe God is there and he saw it. How to get beyond the heinous act? I got to know not only God is there and he saw it, but God is ready to hear from me about my pain and my agony because of the heinous act. Then I got to realize that no rightful person in the right mind would perform such a heinous act. And that's why I can tell God, forgive them. Because if I never ask God to forgive them, I'll never be healed over the pain that I have towards them. And life is too short for me to hold in so much pain. I thank God that I learned how to forgive my enemies. I thank God that I learned how to forgive those who have hurt me and my family. I'm glad that I've learned how to forgive. And I notice every time I've learned how to forgive, there's another wound in me, and it begins to heal all by itself. It heals because I'm starting to forgive some folk who have caused a harm in my life. My brothers and my sisters, stop carrying the baggage of hate, and stop carrying the baggage of anger, and stop carrying the baggage that's really destroying you. Get to the point where you say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Let the church say, amen. I don't know why. So much hatred. So much killing is taking place. I don't know why. But I have to believe that God sees it all. And one day all of us will be judged. I don't know why. Can I just be transparent? I don't know why somebody would rape a 17-month-old baby. I don't know why. I don't even have the answer. But something tells me God was there. And I can tell God I am mad, because you shouldn't have let it happen. And the more I tell God why I'm mad and why I'm angry, it's almost as though God says, you don't think I was there? You don't think I got control over all of this? You don't think I can deal with that stuff? I need something more from you. Forgive them. If you don't forgive them, your anger will fester. And then you'll be just as wrong as they are. But I can forgive them too, Kenny. The same way I forgave you. Father, forgive the rapist, for he did not know what he was doing. Father, forgive the shooter, for he or she did not know what they were doing. Father, forgive all of those who have done wrong, for they don't know what they were doing. Who would hate God on the cross besides a person who does not have a rightful mind? Let's be the church. Let's learn how to forgive. even when it hurts. Because he forgave when he was in the deepest point of agony. And the good news of the gospel, my brothers and sisters, we know he was transformed 3 days later. If you forgive, I guarantee you will be transformed. Don't know when, don't know where, but I can guarantee you will be transformed. Throw away the pain. Throw away the anger. Throw away the stuff by giving it to God and watch him work some things out. You pray for me, I pray for you. And let's watch God change some things. The doors of the church are now open. But they're different now. While the deacons are still coming, associates are still coming. I'm not opening up the doors for someone to join the church. I'm opening up the doors for folk who have not forgiven folk to come down, that we would pray for you. I'm not asking for someone to join the church. That's not what I need to do now. I'm asking for any